Hello, welcome back to day 5 of our 100 days of 1%. 100 days of making small incremental positive steps to have a huge payoff. I'm Dr. Brenda Murphy and I'm the Lazy Naturopath, and I am here to share with you my hacks, tips, tricks, and methodologies where you can put some effort in and get way more effort out or way more payoff out. And today I'm going to pick up where I left off yesterday, and we're going to take a deep dive into phase 1 of taking the right steps in the right order, your pooping power. Now, remember I talked about yesterday how a lot of people are doing the right things. They're making changes that are even things I would recommend, but they're not seeing the payoff from them. And that's because they're often doing them out of sequence. So they're not building on, the changes aren't building on each other. They're not getting the synergism of multiple changes at the same time. And instead they end up playing whack-a-mole, where they're kind of dealing with one problem over here, one problem over here, but nothing's really coalescing. Or they're ping-ponging between issues where one thing gets better but something else gets worse, and then vice versa. Or even worse, they're taking one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. And so they're never really seeing progress, which is crazily frustrating. They're putting all this time and effort in, but not actually seeing the payoff. And that's where that taking the right steps in the right order is the secret to not going nuts and getting the most payoff for the energy you put in. This saves you time, this saves you money, this saves you stress, and it saves you frustration. And this is a system that I've developed over the past 10 plus years of working with patients, where we've just figured out over time what needs to be done first. And if you do things in this order, the payoff happens faster and faster and faster. It's a positive snowball effect. And the really cool thing about helping people make their bodies healthier is when you work from the foundation up and do things in this sequence, it's so common that we have clients who starts with a problem and it fixes itself because we are sequencing things in a way that really pays off. And so the first area that needs to be fixed or needs to be optimized, if anything is going on in your health, is your digestive system, or what I like to call your pooping power. If your digestive system is sluggish, then food is literally rotting inside your colon. You're absorbing that putrefaction, that metabolic waste. It's creating inflammation. It's aggravating previous inflammation. You are recycling toxins and toxicants that you've tried to get rid of. Now you're reabsorbing them into your body. Your bacteria that live in your colon, instead of having a beautiful grassy field, now we're looking at weed patches. So there's a shift of good or beneficial bacteria towards pathogenic or problematic bacteria. And you feel like crud because all of that is going on. So step 1, the starting place, no matter what, is your gut. And that's definitely something as naturopaths that we all sort of align around is, and one of the famous quotes from Dr. Joseph Pizzorno, who's one of the founders of our medical school, Bastyr University, and one of our teachers, luckily, was when in doubt, don't treat the donut, treat the hole, which means start with the gut and see what happens from there. So what are those phases of fixing the gut or optimizing your pooping power? Well, number 1 is checking in to see what is your pooping power. And our really general screening for that is just figuring out how much do you poop a day. So optimally, you should be pooping 2 to 3 times a day, about 30 minutes to an hour after every significant meal. But you can be just fine pooping once a day. So base level question, how much do you poop, and is it once a day? If you're not pooping once a day, or if you poop once a day, you're relying on laxatives or medication-based stool softeners, or you're having to strain, or that pooping is accompanied with a lot of bloating or really smelly gas, then we need to address your pooping power. And the first step of that is clearing the tube. So your digestive tract is one really, really long tube. It's 28 to 29 feet long, starting at your mouth and going all the way through, all the way down to your rectum. Now, your colon, which is the last 5 feet or so of that tube, the job of your colon is to dehydrate and concentrate and compact the waste exiting your small intestine and turn that into solid stool. The colon's also called the large intestine, just in case you've heard both terms. Now, the longer the stool sits in the colon, the more dehydrated and compacted it gets, and the more likely it is to get sluggish or stuck. Stool rarely truly gets stuck in your colon, but we're going to use that as a concept because everybody understands that. Now, your colon is kind of like a major highway. And, I live in Columbus, Georgia. I drive to Atlanta fairly frequently, and Atlanta traffic is amazing. It is intense. But so if we think about the colon, like any major highway you've ever been on, if everything's working well, you can have a lot of cars on a highway and everybody's going at a pretty decent speed, getting to where they need to go easily. But if there are too many cars, there are a lot of semis going slow that are blocking the speed of other cars, or there's a car accident, now we have traffic. And that traffic can then become a traffic jam where everybody is going really, really slow, or even has come to a dead stop and it's sort of, start and stop to get through that highway. Well, your colon's the same way, that if we get compact, dehydrated stool that just either moving really, really slowly or even just stops moving, now we have a traffic jam. And that traffic jam backs cars up behind it, or in this case, backs stool up behind it. So in that, constipation causes constipation. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of the traffic jam. We need to go in and get the excess cars off the road so we can even evaluate what's happening. Just because it is possible to have a colon that lives in LA where there's just traffic all the time. And it doesn't mean the roads are bad, but we can't really tell what's going on with the roads or the inflow and outflow off the highway until we get the cars off and then evaluate and then let the cars back on to see what happens. So step 1 of any pooping power question, or really any chronic health issue, even if you are pooping regularly, is let's get all the old gunk out, clear the tube. Now, the best way to do this is with a series of colonics. Going back to thinking about a traffic jam, colonics act as kind of tow trucks to clear the colon, so they're getting directly to the most problematic area of slow-moving stool and moving that first, and that allows everything else to regain its own speed, depending what that is, where things like laxatives, even stool softeners to some extent, act more like bulldozers. So they're cleaning from the back forward. They're coming from behind the traffic jam, pushing all the cars out of the way, and they can be very effective in the fact that they get the highway clear, but they do it in a way that really disturbs function. So if you're using laxatives on a regular basis, you're solving one problem in the short term, but causing other challenges in the long term. Where colonics not only act as a tow truck, getting to sort of the site of the problem, but they also help with some of the retraining and smoothing out the flow on the highway also. But either way, the first thing we need to do is get the old stuff out of the way and see what happens next. Now, if you don't have access to colonics, like coming to Elements Natural Medicine to see me, you can use some nutrients, you can use some herbs, but again, it's kind of a balance of getting things moving without doing it in a way that disturbs other functionality. And that is kind of customized to what's going on with you at the moment. But step 1, clear the tube. All right, after the tube is clear, now we want to look at the foundations of flow. What does it take for those cars to work and move along the highway? What does it take for your stool to move through your system? And this is pretty basic, but a lot of people still are not quite optimized in this area, and it's water and fiber. Water, because your colon is dehydrating your stool. If your body is dehydrated, more water is going to be sucked out of your colon. And fiber, because you actually need fiber to fluff up and sort of bulk up your stool in a way that your body can actually move the stool through your system. Something I see a lot of is not enough fiber, but also an imbalance of protein to fiber. For people who are eating really high protein diets or just aren't eating a lot of fiber, not only do they not have that bulk in their stool, protein that's really, really gummy and almost clay like. So as your colon contracts to push the stool forward, the gummy stool is just sticky, so it doesn't move very well. And if it becomes more clay like, it tends to just squish out of the way instead of being pushed forward. So, foundations of flow. Are you drinking enough water? Sometimes we need to add minerals like magnesium or electrolytes as part of that hydration fluid balance picture. And then, are you eating enough fiber? And with fiber, there are actually two types of fiber, soluble and insoluble. And we also want the right balance of those two types of fiber. Now, my takeaway here, when in doubt, eat more vegetables. You're going to get, and I'm a huge fan of frozen because you get water, fiber, and you get a mix of the insoluble and soluble in that. So if you think maybe you're not getting quite enough fiber in, boost your veggie intake up. Anything colorful, anything that requires you to chew it, is probably going to have a decent amount of fiber, and it's going to be a good boost for your overall system. All right, so we've cleared the tube, so we've gotten all the cars off the road. We've made sure that the cars, now that are re-entering the road, have good tires. The tires are well inflated. The oil is there. There's nothing wrong with the cars moving. And now we kind of can see, are there issues with the road itself? Is there something going on where the cars are running into issues and slowing down? And this is where we may need to, and actually most of the time, need to do some level of a reboot of gut health. And this is starting with the most basics of making sure you're chewing, but also from more specifically, making sure you have enough stomach acid so you can unwind your proteins, making sure your pancreas is producing enough digestive enzymes to break down your food, making sure you have a good balance of good and bad bacteria, both with potentially supplementing the good bacteria and potentially supplementing some fertilizer for the bacteria with a probiotic and a fertilizing prebiotic. Maybe needing to absorb some of the metabolic waste. So we sort of look through all of the different hormonal and chemical and enzymatic markers and functionalities of the digestive tract and see what gut aspects need to have a reboot and supplement and get that rebooted. Digestion's a funky system in the body in that it's the only one I know of, and I don't have a PhD in anatomy and physiology, so there may be another one, but it's the only one that we learned about in medical school that's a feed-forward system. And that's kind of like your car, that it only goes when you hit the gas to make it go. Now, most body systems are like your car in cruise control, so they run about 50 miles per hour, and the way that we control them is we hit the brakes to slow them down, or maybe hit a little bit of gas to speed them up, but they sort of just average a good 50 miles an hour. With digestion, if you're not constantly hitting the gas, it's going to slow down and slow down and slow down and slow down. And things that take your foot off the gas in your body are stress, lack of sleep, eating on a regular schedule, not chewing, so you're not sort of turning the key on in the first place. A lot of things. So it's really, really easy for digestion to get slowed down, and the reboot process gets it back up to speed, and it's much easier to stay at speed than it is to speed back up. So we really do need to do that externally using a combination of supplements and food and some other things to, reboot your system. The final part of increasing and optimizing your pooping power is addressing the signaling pathways. So we've made sure all the old cars are off the road, the traffic jam has been cleared. We've made sure that the cars on the road can drive well, so we have our fiber and water fueling those cars so they have the ability to move along the highway appropriately. We've made sure that the digestive system and gut health has been rebooted, so all of the stoplights are working, all of the on-ramp signs are working, So all of the systems are capable of functioning, but now sometimes your brain gut brain connection needs to be retuned. Now, again, our bodies tend to be a little lazy. They tend to go towards the easiest level of functionality possible, which we can take advantage of in some situations, but sometimes we need to come back in and remind the body that it needs to do its job. And so this can be from what I call adult over potty training, where you've just gotten so used to telling your brain, no, this is not a good time for me to use the bathroom, so I don't want to poop in public. Your brain stops listening to that signaling. Or you're so constipated when the brain sends a signal for you to poop, it doesn't work, and so the brain stops sending the signal. It can also be structural. It can be that your back is out. The nerves that run to your digestive tract run in between your vertebrae and your spine. And if you sit at a desk all day and slump, and your curvature of your spine has flattened in a way that is problematic, those nerves get a little bit compressed, and even that tiny amount of compression can affect the signaling flow out and back in. But all of these things lead to the flow through your digestive tract being either erratic or sluggish or just generally ineffective. And so once we know that we have no more cars on the road that are causing the traffic jam, the cars that are on the road work well, all of these systems are working, but there's still flow issues, we look at signaling. And rebooting and retuning that signaling system so things can flow and your gut brain gut connection is retuned and reactivated. And this is where colonics are also super helpful, because not only are colonics clearing the old stool out of your system, it's doing it in a way that it is triggering that gut brain gut connection and sort of retraining it and reawakening it. So that's one of the secondary benefits of colonics, and why I think that they're the best way to deal with chronic or long-term constipation, or even short-term constipation, because they're treating the issue, but they're also solving the deeper issues as well. And that's it. So clearing the tube, foundations of flow, rebooting gut health, and retraining the signaling pathways are the steps to elevating you to a pooping power prince or princess. All right, tomorrow we are going to come back and talk about phase 2, which is the mini detox now that you're pooping. All right, I'm Dr. Brenna Murphy. I'm Lazy Naturopath. Come back tomorrow to keep joining me on this journey of day 6 of 100 days of 1%.